Joining us now is journalist Alison Young. She is also a professor at the Missouri School of Journalism, but importantly for our purposes, author of a new book on lab leaks, Pandora's Gamble, Lab Leaks, Pandemics, and a World at Risk. Alison, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Great to have you, Alison.
Thank you.
So you came to notice, we've been covering lab leak now here for a couple of years, but I've also been doing some deeper dives for a piece that you published about anthrax that you were able to reveal in your book, Pandora's Gamble. Maybe first just give people an overview of the book, and then we'll delve a little bit into anthrax itself.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I have been an investigative reporter covering laboratory accidents for 15 years. I mean, everyone's interested in lab leaks right now.
Right.
But the issue of the kinds of problems that are in these high containment labs has been a problem for a very long time. And so Pandora's Gamble is looking at the whole question of, did COVID-19 come from a laboratory accident in the larger context that these kinds of accidents happen all the time.
Can you elaborate on that? When you say these kinds of accidents happen all the time, what are we talking about? And what is it that leads to viruses escaping the lab?
Sure. So there are a variety of levels of laboratory accidents. I mean, you have people get bitten by infectious animals. They stick themselves with needles. They cut themselves with scalpels. They splash infectious fluids on themselves. Various sort of airflow systems that help keep microbes inside cabinets or inside facilities, those systems fail. Wastewater systems leak. There are all kinds of issues in these facilities. The good news is the majority of time people don't become infected. But that's really a matter of luck. And the question is, you know, how long will our luck last, and has it actually already run out?
Yeah, and I think that was so important, which is that, Wuhan, we can focus all day on that. And I think, basically at this point, it almost is tedious to go through the details. The more interesting part is, like, how many more Wuhans are there? How many Wuhans have actually happened here in the United States? You really opened my eyes to this piece about, did a military lab spill anthrax into public waterways, focusing on a 2018 accident. Can you give us some of the details, what you're able to uncover exclusively in your book?
Yes.
Yeah.
So on the Friday before Memorial Day in 2018, at Fort Detrick, one of the premier labs run by the U.S. Army, USAMRIID, they had a wastewater tank, a 50,000-gallon wastewater tank, which, by the way, was rusting and had a variety of other problems. One of the pipes burst on it, and it shot over a containment wall as much as 3,000 gallons of unsterilized laboratory waste.
Oh.
And in the weeks before that happened, those labs had been working with anthrax, Ebola, Marburg virus. I mean, a variety of the most dangerous pathogens in the world. So that's bad enough. But one of the bigger problems is that incident has been kept secret until now. The Army only admitted late, a few weeks after the incident happened, that they had had flooding and that there had been a leak. But they didn't say there were 3,000 gallons in that leak, and that's a huge omission. And these kinds of omissions and the secrecy that surrounds these accidents is pervasive.
Yeah, and so what was the fallout from that incident? What is the fallout today from that incident? And, what should be learned from it?
So at the time, this was one of a series of problems at that facility. In 2019, the federal government took the rare step of suspending USAMRIID's ability to work with what are called select agent pathogens. But why that happened, other than that there were various safety issues, was not known until now. So there is now starting to be fallout from the revelations of the book that it was 3,000 gallons. I mean, there's a citizens commission in Frederick, Maryland, which is just north of the Washington, D.C. area. They were not aware. They had asked questions of what had happened in this incident, and the Army didn't tell them. And so they're learning about it from the book as well.
One of our camera guys that lives there, so he's probably finding this out live.
And the thing for people who are not in this area that they don't realize is, so this all happened in an area where there was an open storm drain that went into something called Carroll Creek, and that's the centerpiece of downtown Frederick. It's a beautiful area, an entertainment district.
Well, and so, Alison, one of the things I respect so much about your work is that you're looking at this dispassionately and you're reporting, very basic facts. You've published previously about near misses at the UNC Chapel Hill and high security labs and accidents with coronaviruses. So once again, put Wuhan aside. Why is some of this research Why does it lead to these types of accidents? This particular one, coronavirus research itself, seems to be at the tip of some of the worst accidents that we've seen in labs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that's really concerning about accidents with coronavirus or various kinds of avian flu viruses are that those are pathogens that can spread from person to person. As we have all learned with the current pandemic, you want to be sure that you have high safety standards there. The accidents that occurred at UNC show that these accidents happen everywhere. And the question of why is we're human beings.
Yes.
Accidents happen.
Right. And so with that in mind, what do you do? Do you just stop researching things? Are there ways you can tighten up the security procedures so that accidents are much, much, much less likely? Because as you state, it seems like there are so many ways that something can escape the lab that it's very difficult to make sure that every single thing is locked down.
Yeah. There are a couple of things that have been proposed for a very long time. One of the things I think that surprises people is that there is no universal regulation of biosafety in laboratories. Now think about that, okay? Yeah. A lot of it is sort of a mixture of guidance. There are some regulations of various sort of piecemeal, but it's fragmented, and it largely relies on these labs policing themselves. The other issue is that unlike in a lot of other areas, there is almost no transparency for the public, which transparency is a key component of accountability. And so it not only shields the mistakes and lax safety practices of labs, it also shields those organizations that we, the public, are trusting from the accountability to know that they're doing their jobs.
That's been such a difficult part of this.
Point.
I've seen it with members of Congress. Most of them don't even know about what's any of this research. They don't even know about the money that they are appropriating in bills to fund this. So have you seen, obviously COVID woke the entire world up to this dynamic. Yet, money-wise, it seems like the canon is still going towards this. Do you think we've made any meaningful progress, or can, with the release of books like yours, or even public awareness around the release of COVID? What do you think?
Well, this area, right now, there is huge public awareness and concern about the issue of did COVID come from a laboratory accident? And I think it's important for the public to start thinking about this, as you've said, in a wider sense, that if whether or not COVID-19 came from a laboratory accident, the Government Accountability Office, which is a nonpartisan, not a hysterical organization in any way, they have been warning for more than a decade that the growing number of labs, the more research that we're doing, is increasing the risk of a catastrophic accident. And to your point, this research is really important, and so the issue is, how do we do it safely? How is there accountability that's put into it? And one of the things on the funding is there is a lot more funding for research because of COVID. There are more labs being built because of COVID. But what is not usually earmarked in this legislation and in this funding is funding for biosafety. There are biosafety officers, but they often don't have the funding to do the kinds of safety oversight.
Got it.
Is that part of the issue for reform, too, that a lot of people do have, their careers and their, their ability to make money and publish papers and whatever is wrapped up in this world and in this research? Is that a barrier to significant reform?
There are huge conflicts of interest in this area. So if you're looking at where there are oversight mechanisms currently, the organizations in the federal government that either have guidelines or some regulatory power, those same organizations fund the research and they do research themselves. And so in the case of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which is one of the agencies that oversees some of this research, their labs have had some of the worst accidents. Okay, so those are the same people, and they have an interest in secrecy and not having public transparency. So one of the issues that various experts have put forth is, should there be a separate independent entity outside of the research community, but obviously grounded in science, that is overseeing this? A great analogy is how the nuclear industry is regulated.
Right. That's such a great point. And lastly, I think Saagar's right that it is sort of tedious at this point to go over all the details of the COVID lab leak or not lab leak. I'm curious, though, just given your expertise, that you've been studying this for so long, when you first started to learn about coronavirus and to think about what its origins might be, what were the thoughts that were going through your head initially?
Yeah, initially, I have to say, like most people, I'm like, this couldn't be, this couldn't be. But the more I looked into it, And especially I thought it couldn't be because some of the world's leading scientists came out of the gate saying this is absolutely not a lab leak.
Very
It's
intentionally
absolutely, absolutely. And as you know, we have later learned, there were a number of secret meetings where they discussed their own concerns that this was not only a lab leak but of a potentially engineered virus.
Right.
And so that disconnect between what was being discussed privately by top scientists and what we were being told in the public was very concerning. And so once I started having a greater awareness of that, obviously with my background reporting on this issue for 15 years, it was always plausible to me that this could be a laboratory accident.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly why we need Trent, because you can't rely on these people to. They're human beings. They're not special. Nobody can police themselves properly. Alison, you have done such an excellent job here. Really, thank you for in such a professional manner. I encourage everybody to go and buy the book. We'll have a link down in the description to go ahead. Pandora's Gamble. If you're just listening, go ahead and search it. Buy it wherever you buy your books. And thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, great to have you, Alison.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.